أعلن افتتاح جلسة مجلس الأمن رقم 9004. جدول الأعمال المؤقت لهذه الجلسة كالآتي: عدم انتشار أسلحة الدمار الشامل جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية. أقر جدول الأعمال. وفقاً للمادة 37 من النظام الداخلي المؤقت للمجلس، أدعو ممثلي اليابان وجمهورية كوريا إلى المشاركة في هذه الجلسة. تقرر ذلك. وفقاً للمادة 39 من النظام الداخلي المؤقت للمجلس، أدعو السيدة روزماري دي كارلو وكيلة الأمين العام للشؤون السياسية وبناء السلام إلى المشاركة في هذه الجلسة. تقرر ذلك. يبدأ مجلس الأمن الآن نظره في البند 2 من جدول الأعمال. معروض على أعضاء المجلس الوثيقة S/2022/263 التي تتضمن نص مشروع قرار مقدم من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. المجلس مستعد للشروع في التصويت على مشروع القرار المعروض عليه. أطرح مشروع القرار للتصويت عليه الآن. يرجى من مؤيدي مشروع القرار الوارد في الوثيقة S/2022/263 رفعوا أيديهم. نتيجة التصويت كالآتي: حصل مشروع القرار على 15 صوتاً مؤيداً. اعتمد مشروع القرار بالإجماع بوصفه القرار 2627 لعام 2022. أعطي الكلمة الآن لأعضاء المجلس الراغبين في الإدلاء ببيانات بعد التصويت. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة الولايات المتحدة.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States would like to express its appreciation to council members for this mandate renewal and for the important discussions that brought us here. The 1718 Committee panel of experts continues to be indispensable in investigating the DPRK's unlawful weapons program and sanctions evasion efforts. Despite the limitations of the COVID-19 pandemic, the panel has nevertheless continued to effectively monitor the implementation of these sanctions. We remain grateful to the panel for their invaluable contributions to the 1718 regime. Colleagues, I have often repeated the importance of effectively overseeing implementation of the 1718 sanctions regime in this chamber, which is made possible by the critical work of the panel. This is particularly essential in light of the DPRK's escalatory provocations since the beginning of the year. There's more that we could and should do to empower the panel and ensure their work can be best leveraged by all member states to fully implement the relevant Security Council resolutions. Although we were unable to come to agreement on how to do this in the resolution we voted on today, I look forward to collaborating with my fellow council members and all member states toward our shared objective of holding the DPRK accountable for its unlawful behavior. I want to end by expressing the United States' concern over the report leakage, a concern I know many council members share, and I hope that all parties protect the report until it is publicly released moving forward. The United States also asked that the panel deliver the incident report requested by multiple council members on the DPRK's unlawful ballistic missile launches earlier this year. I look forward to working with the Council to continue supporting the panel's mandate and fully implementing the international sanctions regime addressing the DPRK's unlawful WMD and ballistic missile program. Thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثلة الولايات المتحدة على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل الصين.
谢谢主席女士。主席女士，中方支持安理会1718委员会专家小组严格根据授权履职，切实改进工作方法，以客观公正方式开展工作，真正帮助会员国更好执行安理会决议。我们对专家小组授权延期决议草案投了赞成票。同时，我们关切地注意到，专家小组2021年中期报告和最终报告均在公开发布前就被泄露，引发媒体不实炒作，甚至还有个别媒体公然援引专家小组离任专家口述的细节材料，详细报道委员会和专家小组内部工作情况。中方对此严重关切，认为安理会有必要在今年的授权延期决议中提出报告泄露和信息保密问题，并据此提出了相关决议草案。决议草案磋商中，中方意见获得大多数安理会成员的支持，但决议执笔国拒绝反映这一合理关切，我们对此深感不满和遗憾。报告泄露和信息保密问题已经成为专家小组的一个痼疾，如再不加以重视并及时解决，将严重损害专家小组信誉，干扰委员会正常工作，也必然会在安理会处理涉朝问题增加复杂因素，并在其他专家小组中产生不良连锁反应。我们呼吁安理会各方提高对有关问题的重视，敦促委员会和秘书处加强对专家小组的指导和约束，敦促其严格按照授权行事，无论是任职期间还是离职以后，都要保守秘密，杜绝泄密事件再次发生。中方保留在安理会和委员会提出进一步要求的权利，期待届时得到各方的支持。对于朝鲜半岛问题本身，我将在稍后的公开会上全面阐述中方立场。谢谢你，主席女士。
أشكر ممثل الصين على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة الاتحاد الروسي.
Госпожа председатель, Россия поддержала принятие проекта резолюции о продлении мандата группы экспертов Комитета Совета Безопасности ООН 1718 по КНДР. В то же время сожалеем, что авторы проекта не учли наши пожелания и предложения наших коллег относительно предотвращения утечек экспертных докладов и расследования таких инцидентов. Рассчитываем, что этот вопрос будет подробно рассмотрен на уровне комитета в целях принятия мер для прекращения этой порочной практики. Я благодарю за внимание.
أشكر ممثلة الاتحاد الروسي على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة النرويج.
Thank you, President. First, allow me to thank the United States as penholder of the 1718 Committee for facilitating the process that led to the renewal of the mandate of the 1718 Committee's panel of experts for 1 year. This process has given all Council members an opportunity to contribute, and we appreciate that consensus has been reached on a technical rollover. I wish to express our great support and appreciation for the panel's hard work, which provides the committee with concrete findings and recommendations. The report produced by the panel continues to offer invaluable insights and background information for both committee members and UN member states. President, the numerous missile launches over the last months, reports from DPRK state media on the development of new missiles technologies, and the lack of an international presence in the DPRK due to its self-imposed COVID restriction all shows that assessment from the panel of experts are more crucial than ever. We therefore welcome the panel's assessment and reporting on incidents of possible non-compliance with relevant Security Council resolutions, also in the interim periods between the submission of its interim and final reports. I would also like to reiterate the importance of the confidentiality of the reports of the panel of experts or related information before publication. Any leakage of confidential information, especially the panel's report before the committee has had an opportunity to consider and discuss it, only diminishes the credibility of the work of the committee and severely impacts its effort to oversee the sanction measures and address non-compliance. We once again thank the Council members for their valuable effort to renew this mandate and extend our sincere thanks to the entire panel of experts for their continued work on this topic. Thank you.
أشكر ممثلة النرويج على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل المكسيك.
Gracias, Presidenta. México apoya la renovación del mandato del panel de expertos del Comité 17-18. Su labor ha sido fundamental en el seguimiento a las decisiones del Consejo de Seguridad en torno a los programas nuclear y balístico de la República Popular Democrática de Corea. No obstante, lamentamos que a pesar de los esfuerzos del autor de la resolución, durante las negociaciones del texto, no hayamos podido alcanzar un acuerdo entre todos los miembros del Consejo en cuanto a una dirección explícita para que el panel de expertos investigue e informe puntualmente sobre incidentes relativos a lanzamientos balísticos en adición a los informes de medio periodo y final del periodo. Esto es especialmente relevante en virtud de la actividad de lanzamientos registrada desde inicios de este año. Consideramos que el panel es la instancia técnica e imparcial que debe otorgar la información de manera expedita sobre el tipo de misiles, la tecnología y las capacidades involucrados en los lanzamientos para establecer sin lugar a dudas si dichas acciones son violatorias de las resoluciones del propio Consejo. Gracias, Presidenta.
أشكر ممثل المكسيك على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن للسيدة روزماري ديكارلو.
Madam President, members of the Council, the State News Agency of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea reported that DPRK launched a new type of intercontinental ballistic missile at approximately 2:34 p.m. local time on 24 March. The missile, so-called Hwasong-17, was reportedly launched from Sunan, an area north of Pyongyang. It covered a range of 1,090 kilometers and reached an apogee of around 6,200 kilometers. It made impact in the sea within Japan's exclusive economic zone. The last time the DPRK conducted an ICBM test was on 29 November 2017. Madam President, the Secretary General strongly condemns the DPRK's latest ICBM launch. This is a flagrant breach of the DPRK's own 2018 moratorium and a clear violation of relevant Security Council resolutions. This launch risks triggering a significant escalation of tensions in the region and beyond. the DPRK has conducted 12 launches using ballistic missile technology this year alone. This is the 5th time the Secretariat has been asked to brief the Council in 2022 in this connection. According to public statements by the DPRK, the launches involved, among other things, a test of so-called hypersonic weapons, railway-borne missiles, an intermediate-range ballistic missile, and tests of systems related to the development of so-called military reconnaissance satellites. It should be recalled that the Council, in Resolution 2397, reaffirmed its decisions that the DPRK shall not conduct any further launches using ballistic missile technology. The DPRK did not issue airspace or maritime safety notifications for any of these launches. The International Civil Aviation Organization has repeatedly informed the DPRK that unannounced missile launches represent a serious risk to international civil aviation. ICAO has also called on the DPRK to act in accordance with the Convention on International Civil Aviation. Madam President, the DPRK also appears to be actively pursuing its nuclear program. On 7 March, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that there were, quote, ongoing indications consistent with the operation of the 5-megawatt reactor at the Yongbyon site, end quote. The IAEA added that they continued to observe construction activities at the Yongbyon site, including the construction of an annex to the reported centrifuge enrichment facility. The same day, satellite imagery analysis indicated that there was renewed activity at the Punggye-ri nuclear test site for the first time since Pyongyang announced its closure and dismantlement in 2018. In pursuing its nuclear capability and ballistic missile programs, the DPRK is defying the repeated demands of the Council to cease such activities. We have consistently conveyed these concerns to the DPRK. Madam President, the Secretary General reiterates the importance of addressing humanitarian imperatives in the DPRK. The United Nations remains engaged and stands ready, along with its humanitarian partners, to assist people in need in the DPRK, whose vulnerability has likely increased since the pandemic outbreak and border closures in 2020. We reiterate our call for the entry of international staff, including the UN Resident Coordinator, and the unimpeded entry of humanitarian supplies to allow for a timely and effective response. Madam President, the Secretary General reaffirms his commitment to working with all parties for sustainable peace and the complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. He urges the DPRK to comply with the decisions of the Council, reset the course to dialogue, and build on previous diplomatic efforts. Further, the United Nations welcomes the regular contact and cooperation among the key parties on the Korean Peninsula. We commend the parties for their willingness to engage in dialogue with the DPRK without preconditions. Madam President, let me close by reiterating that the unity of the Security Council in this matter is essential to ease tensions, overcome the diplomatic impasse, and avoid a negative action-reaction cycle. Thank you, Madam President.
أشكر السيدة دي كارلو على إحاطتها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لأعضاء المجلس الراغبين في الإدلاء ببيانات. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة الولايات المتحدة.
Thank you again, Madam President, and thank you, Undersecretary DiCarlo, for your briefing. The United States, along with Albania, France, Ireland, Norway, and the United Kingdom, call for today's open meeting on the DPRK. the first since 2017 because of the urgency of the escalating situation. Let me be crystal clear. The United States absolutely condemns the DPRK intercontinental ballistic missile launch on March 24th. This launch violated multiple Security Council resolutions. It was an egregious and unprovoked escalation, and it poses a threat to the global proliferation regime and the entire international community. This launch warrants an immediate response from the Council. This is the DPRK's 13th ballistic missile launch this year. The United States and allies assess that 2 of these previous launches were also of ICBM systems. The DPRK's long-range ballistic missile system can threaten nearly every UN member state. Although the DPRK tried to mask recent launches under the guise of supporting a reconnaissance satellite, the March 24 launch demonstrates unequivocally the DPRK's intent to continue to advance its long-range ballistic missile systems. You may have also seen media reports that the DPRK is reconstructing a nuclear testing site that has been closed since 2018. The imagery and the analysis are alarming. So it is clear that the DPRK has escalated its provocations with impunity while the Council has remained silent. And it is clear that remaining silent in the hope that the DPRK would similarly show restraint is a failed strategy. We must pivot to a successful one. The Security Council must speak publicly and with one voice to condemn the DPRK's unlawful actions and encourage the DPRK to return to the negotiating table. The United States remains committed to a diplomatic solution. We hope the DPRK will accept our repeated offers of dialogue, but we also cannot stand idly by in the face of the DPRK's repeated security resolution violations. We have also heard recent calls for sanctions relief for the DPRK, but why should the Security Council reward bad behavior? The DPRK has broken its self-imposed moratorium on launching ICBMs and has repeatedly shown that it is more interested in advancing its unlawful weapons program than investing in the welfare of its own people. This is not my opinion, and it's not a secret. The regime itself openly outlined this strategy in the 2021 Party Congress to develop increasingly sophisticated and advanced WMD and ballistic missile capabilities. Offering sanctions relief without substantive diplomatic progress would only funnel more revenue to the regime and accelerate the realization of its WMD and ballistic weapons goals. It also sends the wrong message to other WMD proliferators, that the Security Council will reward them for repeatedly undermining the non-proliferation regime. Meanwhile, the sanctions regime has undeniably restricted the DPRK's unlawful weapons advancements. So now is not the time to end our sanctions. Now is the time to enforce them. The United States calls on all member states to fully implement the existing Security Council resolutions. And because of DPRK's increasingly dangerous provocations, the United States will be introducing a Chapter 7 Security Council resolution to update and strengthen the sanctions regime. In Security Council Resolution 2397, which we unanimously adopted, the Council decided we would take further action in the event of a DPRK ICBM launch. This is precisely what happened. So now is the time to take that action. And no matter what, sanctions regimes require regular updating and maintenance to be effective. Now is the time to make these critical updates. So I call on all my fellow council members to approach the negotiations on a text constructively toward our shared goal of denuclearization. Colleagues, this isn't a bilateral issue. It's not a regional issue. It's an issue for all of us. The DPRK's pursuit of weapons of mass destruction and its ballistic missile delivery system poses a threat to every member of the global community. History, especially recent history, has shown us that Council silence and sanctions relief does not work. Instead, we must come together, just like we did in 2016 and 2017, to send an unequivocal message to the DPRK that the Security Council and international community will not ignore DPRK's flagrant violations of Security Council resolutions and its willful disregard for regional and global stability. Let us act now, before the DPRK escalates further, to send the message that the Security Council will not waver in its responsibility to protect the world from weapons of mass destruction and maintain international peace and security. Thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثلة الولايات المتحدة على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل ألبانيا.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank USG DiCarlo for her update. We are sad that it confirms our assessment. The Pyongyang regime is continuously, stubbornly, unilaterally, and dangerously escalating tensions in the region, threatening its neighbors, snubbing the Security Council, and violating the Council's resolution. This is intolerable. This is the 13th missile launch this year, in the very same pattern of defiance. In a previous meeting, we asked, is there a threshold of defiance, of contempt of this body before we come together and speak with one voice? DPRK might think that the attention of the Council is elsewhere. They are mistaken. We will condemn their reckless actions, and we will not let this or any of their provocations go unnoticed. The defying attitude and the renegade acts by the Pyongyang regime must be met with a united and resolved Council on an open and determined response. DPRK must be told in clear terms that they cannot defy the international community and they cannot disrespect Security Council resolutions. Resolutions are not to be contemplated, they are to be implemented. This is why Albania joined others in requesting this public meeting today. The Council cannot continue to meet behind doors. It has shown patience, but it has been met with DPRK's indifference. Therefore, the regime must know that we will not accept such behavior and that it will not be held, and that it will be held accountable for such flagrant breaches of international law. Dear colleagues, failure of the Council to denounce such unlawful acts will only serve to encourage the regime in Pyongyang to continue to blackmail its neighbors, threaten the region, and endanger the wider world. Inaction is tantamount to tacit approval. As we have said before, it's a license to do more of the same. This new and latest launch is a new level of provocation. It represents another and repeated breach of its self-announced moratorium of 2018. Albania strongly condemns such provocative acts and aggressive actions. We call on the regime to stop, return to the negotiation table urgently and without preconditions. Dear colleagues, we just adopted the resolution on the mandate renewal of panel of experts. The DPRK repeated missile launches require a comprehensive and timely analysis from the panel of experts and incidents report of any breach of United Nations Security Council resolutions by the regime. We look forward to working with the panel in this regard. While the regime is investing millions in research into their ballistic programs, its population continues to starve, isolated from the world, keeping its people undereducated, inflicting untold poverty, pain and suffering upon women, men, and children in the whole country. The regime needs to also be held accountable for its mistreatment of the population, for human rights violations, slavery, and economic starvation. The population needs food. The regime is giving them weapons, weapons that go higher, faster, and further, starving the population and threatening the region. But make no mistake, missiles will not make North Korea any stronger, any better. They will rather make it more isolated and poorer, as it is the case, unfortunately, regrettably. The catastrophic humanitarian situation will not resolve by itself. Pyongyang regime must allow unimpeded entry of humanitarian assistance in the country, which requires unfettered access for international staff, including the resident coordinator. It is high time for the DPRK to return to the table of negotiations for an unconditional and meaningful dialogue under diplomacy, not provocations. We encourage all members of this council to show unity. This means issuing common, simple, factual press elements. Our goal is and must remain a complete, comprehensive, irreversible, and verifiable denuclearization of the entire Korean peninsula. And I thank you.
أشكر ممثل ألبانيا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل إيرلندا.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to USG DiCarlo for her useful briefing. Madam President, Ireland condemns yesterday's launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile by the DPRK. We are gravely concerned by the ongoing, intensive and escalatory series of launches by the DPRK since the end of last year, in violation of Security Council resolutions. This ICBM launch represents a serious escalation in the continuing destabilizing actions by the DPRK. It is designed to raise tensions, threatening the peace and stability of the Korean Peninsula and the wider region, as well as to undermine the global non-proliferation architecture. It is a further flagrant challenge to the serious concerns of the international community and to the authority of this Council. Madam President, these launches are all the more worrisome given the DPRK's continuing nuclear activities. The Council has been silent too long. It must speak now with a clear, strong and unified voice to make clear to the DPRK that it cannot continue down this path without repercussions. We therefore strongly support a Council press statement on this matter. We must be clear that further ballistic missile tests or a nuclear test are utterly unacceptable. We must, together, urge the DPRK to end its destabilizing actions. We must, together, press the DPRK to take up the good faith offer of talks by the United States and South Korea without preconditions. And we must, together, hold the DPRK to its obligations, to abandon its ballistic missile program and its nuclear and other WMD programs in a complete, verifiable and irreversible manner. The DPRK should also heed the Council's long-standing calls to resume its obligations under the NPT and IAEA safeguards and to sign and ratify the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Madam President, this Council has been clear in Resolution 2397 that it has a responsibility to act in response to an ICBM launch, and we will need to look at appropriate actions. We must stem the sophisticated sanctions evasion efforts by the DPRK, which fund and assist procurement for the DPRK's illegal programs. This Council's resolutions, including those relating to the 1718 sanctions regime, must be fully and effectively enforced. The panel of experts has repeatedly, with detailed evidence, set out important recommendations, including on designations of the vessels and entities involved, and on the need to update relevant control lists. We must act urgently on these recommendations. Finally, Madam President, we again urge the DPRK to respond to the concerns and offers of assistance from the international community regarding the dire humanitarian situation in the country. We urge the DPRK to allow access for the UN and other humanitarian actors to assess needs and provide appropriate assistance. the DPRK has, over the past 30 years, prioritized its illegal military programs over the livelihoods, well-being, and rights of its own citizens, with disastrous consequences for its own people. It is clear that there must be a diplomatic and peaceful resolution to the issues on the Korean Peninsula. Unfortunately, it appears that the DPRK alone does not understand this. The DPRK must respond concretely and credibly to the concerns of the international community. It will then find this Council in a position to reciprocate with concrete measures. It is, and it has always been, in the DPRK's hands. Thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثل إيرلندا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل فرنسا.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie Madame Di Carlo pour son exposé. La France condamne avec la plus grande fermeté le tir d'un missile balistique intercontinental effectué par la Corée du Nord le 24 mars. Ce tir représente une menace à la paix et à la sécurité internationale. Il constitue une nouvelle violation des résolutions de ce Conseil. Cette provocation est la plus grave depuis près de 5 ans. Il s'agit de la 12e série de tirs depuis le début de cette année. En mettant fin à son moratoire sur les missiles de longue portée, le régime nord-coréen a clairement choisi l'escalade. Il est essentiel que ce Conseil condamne unanimement cette provocation. La Corée du Nord vient de tester un nouveau missile intercontinental, probablement plus puissant que ceux testés en 2017. Ce Conseil doit agir. Nous ne pouvons pas laisser une violation d'une telle ampleur sans réponse. Ne rien faire serait prendre un risque majeur pour la stabilité régionale et pour l'architecture internationale de non-prolifération. Madame la Présidente, depuis l'adoption en 2006 de la résolution 1718, la Corée du Nord n'a cessé de moderniser son arsenal balistique. Dans le même temps, elle a consolidé son programme nucléaire. Il faut le rappeler, la Corée du Nord a déjà effectué 6 essais nucléaires et a annoncé sa volonté de développer des armes nucléaires tactiques. Nous sommes très préoccupés par les informations faisant état d'activités de construction sur le site d'essais nucléaires de Pongye-ri. Face à ces provocations répétées, alléger les sanctions n'aurait aucun sens. Ce qu'il faut, c'est mettre en œuvre le régime de sanctions avec plus de fermeté et plus d'efficacité. Actuellement, la Corée du Nord contourne ces sanctions. Elle trouve les moyens de financer ses programmes d'armement. Nous devons donc mettre à jour le régime de sanctions, y compris dans de nouveaux domaines tels que le cyber, qui permet à la Corée du Nord de capter des informations et des devises de l'ordre de plusieurs centaines de millions d'euros. Il faut y mettre un terme. Madame la Présidente, la France exhorte la Corée du Nord à s'engager dans un processus de démantèlement complet, vérifiable et irréversible de ses programmes d'armes de destruction massive. Nous appelons également à une reprise du dialogue. Tous les acteurs de la région doivent s'investir. La Corée du Nord doit saisir les propositions faites en ce sens. Je conclurai en soulignant notre préoccupation vis-à-vis de la situation humanitaire en Corée du Nord. Nous regrettons profondément que le régime nord-coréen continue de consacrer l'essentiel de ses maigres ressources à développer ses programmes proliférants au lieu de répondre aux besoins de base de sa population. Je vous remercie.
أشكر ممثل فرنسا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة النرويج.
Thank you, President, and thanks to USG Rosemary DiCarlo for your brief. Norway strongly condemns the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile by the DPRK on 24 March. The continued development of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles by the DPRK is a direct threat to regional and international peace and security, and is in violation of several UN Security Council resolutions. We deeply regret that this latest launch, along with the test on 27 February and 5th March, leaves no doubt that the DPRK has ended its moratorium on such tests. It also falls into a pattern of numerous missile tests over the past months, including a variety of missiles and technologies. These are cause for great concern. We continue to stress that the government of the DPRK must comply fully with its international obligation, reverse its course, and withdraw the international non-proliferation regime through the NPT and IAEA safeguards. The behavior and threat from the DPRK have reached a new magnitude, and we are concerned that the DPRK will continue to escalate its illegal activities. Previous reports by the panel of experts show that DPRK's high level of commitment to sustaining and further developing its WMD programs. The current path is not only a threat to international peace and security, but it also aggravates an already deteriorating economic, humanitarian, and human rights situation within the country. The DPRK's desire to develop nuclear capacities and missile systems does not contribute to the future of the North Korean people. It keeps them stuck in the past. We are profoundly sad to see the government continue to channel its resources to weapons development instead of delivering basic services to its own people. We call on the DPRK to end its self-imposed blockade and allow the UN, its resident coordinator, and other international organizations to re-enter and resume their humanitarian work. And we call on North Korea to respond to repeated offers of dialogue and to take concrete steps to abandon its WMD and ballistic missile programs in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner. Until concrete steps are taken, the sanctions measure imposed by this Council must remain in force and be fully implemented by all states. Thank you.
أشكر ممثلة النرويج على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن للممثلة المملكة المتحدة.
Thank you, Madam President, and I join others in thanking Under-Secretary DiCarlo for her briefing. The UK condemns the test of an intercontinental ballistic missile by North Korea on the 24th of March, as well as tests of new ICBM capabilities on the 27th of February and the 5th of March. This year alone, 13 ballistic missiles have been launched across 10 sets of tests, each a violation of the Security Council resolutions. We're deeply concerned by the increased tempo of these launches and the growing capability they represent. Let there be no doubt, the clear threat that North Korea poses to international security is increasing. These violations of Security Council resolutions should be met with a firm and united response from this Council. The last time North Korea launched ICBMs in 2017, the Council responded decisively by adopting Resolution 2371. We look to this Council to display the same unity and resolve to protect the safety of this and future generations as it displayed then, and we look forward to constructive discussions on further measures proposed by the USA. We should urgently, therefore, consider further steps that this Council can take, including updated and targeted sanctions to disrupt North Korea's unlawful testing and illicit proliferation. We call on all member states to implement fully the Security Council's resolutions and enforce sanctions unanimously adopted in order to limit North Korea's illicit nuclear and ballistic missile programs. As the North Korean government continues to pour resources into weapons programs, the humanitarian situation in the country may be worsening. The UK is clear that the Council's measures against these illicit weapons programs, including sanctions, are not targeted at the North Korean people. We fully support the delivery of humanitarian support to the most vulnerable in North Korean society. We call upon North Korea to allow UN humanitarian workers to carry out an independent needs assessment and to allow aid to flow freely into the country. We urge North Korea to refrain from further provocations, engage meaningfully with the US in dialogue, and abandon all of its nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner. I thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثلة المملكة المتحدة على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل الهند.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for convening this meeting today. We thank USG DiCarlo for her briefing. We welcome the participation of Japan and the Republic of Korea in today's meeting as well. We have noted the concerns expressed by countries in the region on the DPRK's launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile. India deplores the launch of an ICBM by the DPRK. This is a violation of the resolutions of the UN Security Council relating to the DPRK. It affects peace and security of the region and beyond. Further, the launch contravenes DPRK's own self-declared moratorium against the launch of ICBMs and goes against the objective of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which has been endorsed by the DPRK itself. We call for full implementation of the UN Security Council resolutions related to the DPRK. This council has met several times since the beginning of the year to discuss the series of missile launches by the DPRK. In this context, we would like to recall our request to the panel of experts under the 1718 Committee for incident reports on these launches in the context of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. We hope that the panel will come out with its reports soon. India also believes that there is a pressing need to address the proliferation of nuclear and missile technologies related to the DPRK in our region. These linkages have an adverse impact on the peace and security in the region, including on India. India supports dialogue to resolve the issue in the Korean Peninsula. Madam President, India is sensitive to the humanitarian situation in the DPRK, and we had granted humanitarian assistance of $1 million for the people of the DPRK in the form of anti-tuberculosis medicines routed through the WHO. We also note that the 1718 Sanctions Committee has been extending approvals for the humanitarian assistance as and when they are received. Finally, India reiterates its continued support to denuclearization towards peace and security in the Korean Peninsula. I thank you.
أشكر ممثل الهند على بيانه. أعطي الآن الكلمة لممثل الصين.
谢谢主席女士。主席女士，我认真听取了迪卡洛副秘书长的通报。朝鲜半岛局势是安理会长期关注的重要问题。过去几年里，我们看到，在各方共同努力下，朝鲜半岛局势呈现总体缓和态势，来之不易。美朝两国领导人2018年之后举行多次会晤，就改善两国关系和推进半岛无核化进程达成重要共识。在此基础上，朝鲜作出了关于暂停核试验和洲际弹道导弹试射的承诺，向半岛无核化迈出重要的一步。但是，自2021年初，特别是进入5月以后，美朝对话持续陷入僵局，无核化进程停滞不前，半岛局势变数增多，紧张的一面有所上升。作为半岛近邻， 中方始终坚持维护半岛和平稳定，坚持半岛无核化，坚持通过对话协商解决问题，希望美朝积极开展对话接触，寻求处理分歧的有效方案。我们遗憾地看到，时间在一天天过去，有关方除了表示无条件对话，却没有拿出实实在在的行动回应朝方合理关切。朝鲜日前宣布进行洲际弹道导弹试射，中方对当前事态发展感到关切。当前形势下，我们呼吁有关各方保持冷静克制，坚持对话协商的正确方向，避免采取可能加剧紧张局势和导致误判的行动。半岛问题的直接当事方，也就是美国和朝鲜，应当尽早重启直接对话进程。美方理应展现诚意，采取有实际意义的行动，为稳定局势、积累互信、重启对话做出更大努力。主席女士，当前形势下，国际社会在半岛问题上应保持审慎和理性态度，为推动半岛问题政治解决发挥积极和建设性作用。一是全力珍惜和维护朝鲜半岛和平稳定。当前国际局势并不平静，各方均不应采取升级紧张局势的行动，半岛也承受不起局势骤变甚至严重逆转的危险。当务之急是有关各方应基于局势最新进展，在已有谅解基础上，积极寻求打破僵局的政治解决方案。中方呼吁各方着眼半岛和平稳定大局，谨言慎行，坚持对话协商，按照双轨并进思路和分阶段同步走原则，为实现半岛无核化、构建半岛和平机制做出不懈的努力。二是重视解决朝方合理关切。半岛问题起起伏伏，延宕几十年，形势走到今天，事出有因。问题根源在于朝鲜面临的外部安全威胁长期得不到消除，朝方的合理安全关切始终没有得到解决。朝鲜明确表示，朝美首脑会晤后，美方没有履行终止与韩国联合军演的承诺，反而把战略核武器部署在朝鲜半岛周边地区，严重威胁朝鲜安全。朝方上述表态理应得到有关各方重视，安理会也应从安全不可分割原则出发，思考如何照顾朝方合理安全关切。三是美朝尽快恢复直接对话。事实反复证明，对话和外交努力只有走在前面，才能避免危机的发生。放任形势持续恶化，不符合任何一方的利益。2018年以来，半岛形势一度出现重大积极转圜。遗憾的是，朝方采取的一系列举措没有得到应有的回报，这不符合各方已形成共识的行动对行动原则，也使得各种对话提议沦为空洞的口号。下一步形势往哪里走，很大程度上取决于美方怎么做，是真正拿出解决问题的具体行动，还是继续把半岛问题当作地缘战略的筹码。美方不能再漠视朝方合理诉求，而应拿出有吸引力的方案，为早日重启对话创造条件。四是全面理解和执行安理会涉朝决议。安理会涉朝决议应得到全面、完整、准确的执行。 推进政治解决，适时缓解制裁，也是执行安理会涉朝决议的重要内容。半岛问题走不出僵局，一定程度上正是因为相关条款没有得到有效执行。有关方面应予以充分重视，采取切实行动，而不应只是片面强调制裁条款。安理会应当在半岛问题上发挥建设性作用，而不应一味强调制裁施压。中俄在安理会共提的涉朝决议草案，出发点就是为缓解朝鲜人道民生形势，为各方促进互信、实现对话营造氛围，为半岛问题政治解决注入动力。这一草案仍然有效，希望各方继续给予积极考虑和支持。主席女士，维护国际核不扩散体系符合各国的共同利益。在朝核问题延宕难决的重要关口，有关国家仍无视国际社会关切，执意推进存在严重核扩散风险的核潜艇合作。这种做法违背不扩散核武器条约的目的和宗旨，损害地区和平与稳定，破坏国际核不扩散体系。中方敦促有关国家忠实履行核不扩散义务，为推动有关防扩散热点问题的解决，维护地区和平稳定，发挥建设性的作用。谢谢你，主席女士。
أشكر ممثل الصين على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل المكسيك.
Gracias, Presidenta. Gracias a la Secretaria General Adjunta Di Carlo. Comienzo por expresar nuestra preocupación ante la necesidad de que el Consejo de Seguridad se reúna nuevamente, si bien esta vez de manera pública, en respuesta a otro lanzamiento de un misil balístico ayer 24 de marzo por parte de la RPDC. Se trata de una nueva provocación, aunque cualitativamente distinta, por tratarse de un misil de rango intercontinental con un alcance mayor al registrado previamente. México condena enérgicamente el lanzamiento de misiles en violación de las decisiones del Consejo de Seguridad. Dichas acciones, lejos de abonar a la posibilidad de una solución diplomática, solamente incrementan la desconfianza y minan la seguridad regional. Las implicaciones para la paz y la seguridad internacionales de este lanzamiento no pueden verse de manera aislada. Expresamos nuestra preocupación por el patrón de acciones que apuntan a que la RPDC continúa avanzando en su intención y capacidad tecnológica con fines militares. Es evidente que las sanciones que ha impuesto este Consejo para frenar el programa nuclear y balístico de la RPDC no están funcionando, como lamentablemente confirman los informes del panel de expertos. El Organismo Internacional de Energía Atómica igualmente ha informado sobre el reinicio de actividad nuclear con la consecuente preocupación de la comunidad internacional. El Consejo de Seguridad tiene el deber de hacer valer sus decisiones y frenar todas las vías para la adquisición y proliferación de tecnología nuclear y misiles. Por ello, reitero el compromiso de mi país con la aplicación del régimen de sanciones, pero también con el llamado a todos los estados para que ejerzan una aplicación estricta de las resoluciones pertinentes y se adhieran a los mecanismos establecidos. Presidenta, llamamos a ejercer máxima moderación e insistimos en la necesidad de un diálogo con la RPDC que conduzca a la desnuclearización completa, verificable e irreversible de la península coreana. Los actores con influencia, incluidos los miembros de este Consejo, no deben escatimar esfuerzos por establecer dicho diálogo. Consideramos que además de los contactos bilaterales, es oportuno explorar formatos multilaterales que involucren a todos los actores regionales concernidos. Concluyo reiterando que es absolutamente necesario cumplir de manera inequívoca con los compromisos adquiridos en materia de desarme por los estados poseedores de armas nucleares, con miras a lograr un mundo libre de armas nucleares. Gracias, Presidenta.
أشكر ممثل المكسيك على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل غانا.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me the floor and also for convening this open meeting. I would also like to thank USG Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing to the Council and welcome the representatives of Japan and the Republic of Korea to the meeting. We are meeting today under heavy clouds of escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula and the wider Northeast Asia region. These tensions have been occasioned not only by the DPRK's launch of the Hwasong-17 intercontinental ballistic missile yesterday, but also by its 11 previous launches of ballistic missiles this year alone. The fact that this Council has agreed to meet in open session after 6 closed consultations since the beginning of this year shows the grave concern that the international community has over the situation. The present missile launch represents an end to DPRK's self-imposed moratorium on ICBM tests and the first long-range ICBM test since 2017. The implications of this new development for international peace and security, including for the DPRK's immediate neighbors, are grave, and we must all acknowledge that. Equally worrying is the fact that the launch was carried out without regard to aviation and maritime safety. Ghana is therefore gravely concerned about this current launch, which is in blatant violation of the DPRK's international obligations, as expressed in multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions. The reported intention of the DPRK to develop a nuclear war deterrent in preparation for a long-standing confrontation with another member state goes contrary to its obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the regime and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, which enjoin all member states to be peace-loving. Madam President, the actions of the DPRK have heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula at a time when the international community is focused on finding a pathway for dialogue and diplomacy to address the worrying developments in Ukraine and its consequences. In this regard, we urge the DPRK to refrain from further missile test launches and to take the urgent and necessary steps to ease tensions in the region. We also reiterate our call on the DPRK to adhere to the relevant Security Council resolutions. The world can ill afford to have multiple crises at this time, when we are still grappling with the many deaths on both sides of the war in Ukraine, the displacement of more than 10 million people from that country, and the transmission of the shocks of food and energy insecurity across several parts of the world with an associated rise in cost of living. Ghana therefore reiterates its call for the resumption of constructive and credible dialogue between the relevant parties and the DPRK to find an enduring, comprehensive, and peaceful solution to the issues on the Korean Peninsula, and in a manner that recognizes the regional and global security concerns, as well as those of the parties. In this regard, we encourage the U.S. to sustain its offer of dialogue with the DPRK without preconditions and urge the DPRK to accept the offer in good faith in support of the cause for peace. Madam President, it is worth noting that while tensions on the Korean Peninsula are high, the humanitarian situation in the DPRK continues to be dire. Ghana commends the Council and the 1718 Committee for its proactive approach in addressing the humanitarian situation in the DPRK within the framework of exemptions in the existing sanctions regime, and calls on the DPRK to streamline its internal processes to enable the much-needed medical and other humanitarian supplies to reach the people of the DPRK. We also urge the DPRK to allow the UN humanitarian agencies back into the country. We support efforts by the UN system to re-establish the banking channel within the DPRK. We hope that this Council and other relevant parties will be able to act in a manner that preserves the peace while at the same time ensuring that the humanitarian needs of the people of the DPRK are addressed. I thank you very much for your attention.
أشكر ممثل غانا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل كينيا.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank Under Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing and welcome the participation of the Republic of Korea and Japan. Madam President, Kenya is gravely concerned by the latest intercontinental ballistic missile test launch by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in clear violation of the relevant Security Council resolutions. This 13th test launched since the beginning of the year clearly demonstrates an escalation of the situation in the Korean Peninsula. Indeed, the prospects of a resumption in the testing of nuclear weapons are regrettably increasing by the day. Moreover, the launches carried out without notification to the relevant maritime and aviation regulatory bodies pose a serious threat to maritime and air safety. The successive provocative acts are driving the region into an arms race with attendant destabilization effects and grave implications for global peace and security. With the prevailing security situation already posing serious socioeconomic and security challenges, particularly in developing countries, the international community can ill afford another crisis. Regrettably, this escalation of armaments is also diverting resources away from the much-needed social protection and development for the people of the DPRK. Kenya calls on the DPRK to halt any further test launches and recommit to the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons treaty, IAEA safeguards, and the relevant resolutions of the Security Council. We reiterate that the only path acceptable to the international community is genuine dialogue without preconditions. That's dialogue that considers the interests and perceptions of threat of all parties in the region. In this regard, Kenya urges the international community to help restart diplomatic efforts to find a lasting solution to the threat in the Korean Peninsula for the sake of global security. Madam President, amidst this development, we call upon all parties concerned to spare a thought for the humanitarian plight of approximately 11 million DPRK citizens who are in need. Both sides have a responsibility to ensure that any actions they take do not exacerbate the suffering of the people. But it is the DPRK to demonstrate commitment in this regard by ceasing its ballistic missile program. I thank you.
أشكر ممثل كينيا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل غابون.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je remercie Madame Rosemary DiCarlo pour son exposé. La Corée du Nord a procédé hier, le 24 mars, à un nouveau lancement de projectiles non identifiés. Il s'agit du 13e lancement depuis le début de l'année, qui démontre qu'il y a non seulement une accélération du rythme, mais encore une montée en puissance dans le type de projectiles lancés. Ce nouveau développement constitue une mise à exécution des menaces de la Corée du Nord de revenir sur ses engagements relatifs au moratoire sur les essais de longue portée. Ceci est de nature à remettre en cause les mesures de confiance convenues par les parties aux négociations initiées en 2017. Le Gabon condamne ces tirs de missiles, ainsi que l'utilisation d'armes ou de matériel militaire pouvant avoir des effets indiscriminés. Je réitère l'attachement de mon pays aux conventions internationales relatives au désarmement nucléaire et à la non-prolifération, et en particulier au TNP, au traité d'interdiction complète des essais nucléaires, ainsi qu'au respect des résolutions de ce Conseil visant la préservation de la paix et de la sécurité internationale. Mon pays est très préoccupé par la détérioration exponentielle du climat sécuritaire international qui, compte tenu du contexte actuel, laisse présager une course aux armes, notamment aux armes non conventionnelles. Nous sommes d'autant plus confortés dans notre conviction que les armes qui sont fabriquées pour être utilisées dans les conflits ne sont pas des instruments de paix et de sécurité et qu'en l'espèce, elles ne peuvent pas être assez dissuasives pour contribuer à la paix et la sécurité mondiale, bien au contraire. Il y a urgence à tirer les enseignements de l'incapacité des sanctions à constituer une réponse adéquate et efficace face, d'une part, aux périls potentiels que font courir les lancements de missiles dans cette zone très peuplée, et d'autre part, face à l'extrême détresse des populations en RDPC. Mon pays appelle les différentes parties à la reprise du dialogue sur le nucléaire nord-coréen et à privilégier la solution politique et diplomatique dans la résolution de la crise dans la péninsule coréenne. C'est pour nous la seule alternative crédible pour donner une perspective de développement et de paix à l'ensemble de la région. Je vous remercie.
أشكر ممثلة الغابون على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثلة الاتحاد الروسي.
Госпожа председатель, благодарю госпожу Ди Карло за ее брифинг. Россия выступает против любой военной активности, которая ставит под угрозу безопасность Корейского полуострова и стран Северо-Восточной Азии. Сожалеем о последних событиях в регионе. Убеждены, что поиск взаимоприемлемых политико-дипломатических развязок – единственный возможный путь к мирному решению проблем Корейского полуострова и формированию в Северо-Восточной Азии прочных механизмов безопасности. Именно это должно быть главной нашей задачей, решение которой позволит нормализовать ситуацию в регионе. С сожалением отмечаем, что за последние 4 года Совет так и не смог найти в себе силы отреагировать на демонтаж северокорейцами своего ядерного полигона, соблюдение Пхеньяном моратория на ядерные испытания и запуски межконтинентальных баллистических ракет. В каждой своей резолюции по КНДР, начиная с 2006 года, Совет выражал готовность пересматривать ограничения в зависимости от степени выполнения Пхеньяном положения соответствующих документов. К сожалению, до сих пор Совет Безопасности лишь ужесточал рестрикции, игнорируя позитивные сигналы со стороны Северной Кореи. В этой связи нынешнее развитие – это во многом последствия такой недальновидности некоторых присутствующих здесь коллег, не готовых выйти за пределы санкционной парадигмы, которая за многие годы так и не смогла гарантировать безопасность в регионе. Других же жизнеспособных инициатив мы от них не видим. Исходим из того, что дальнейшее наращивание санкций против КНДР уже выходит за рамки мер по перекрытию каналов финансирования запрещенных ракетно-ядерных программ и угрожает северокорейским гражданам недопустимыми социально-экономическими и гуманитарными потрясениями. Хотели бы напомнить американским коллегам, что переговоры – это улица с двусторонним движением. Совершенно бесперспективно ожидать от Пхеньяна безоговорочного разоружения под угрозой раскручивания санкционной спирали и под гарантией ничем не подкрепленных обещаний. Создание же новых военных блоков в регионе, таких как объединение США, Великобритании и Австралии, вызывает серьезные сомнения в добрых намерениях этих стран, в том числе и со стороны Пхеньяна, и не содействует налаживанию диалога. Мы неоднократно говорили о необходимости формирования пространств единой и неделимой безопасности. Без полного учета законных озабоченностей всех государств региона в сфере безопасности устойчивых результатов достичь невозможно. Институты и механизмы ООН и ее Совета Безопасности должны задействоваться для поддержки процессов урегулирования и межкорейского диалога, а не становиться для них преградой. Только тогда можно будет говорить об эффективном решении накопившихся в регионе проблем, включая ядерную, на основе диалога и взаимоприемлемых договоренностей. Санкциями и давлением достичь этого будет невозможно. Еще большее отторжение вызывают так называемые автономные, вторичные санкции против КНДР и других государств, вводимые Вашингтоном и его союзниками в обход и сверх санкций Совета Безопасности. Односторонние рестрикции не только попирают суверенитет и законные интересы стран-членов и противоречат нормам и правилам международной торговли, но и подрывают целостность согласованных по линии Совета Безопасности ограничений. Недопустимы попытки осветить такие рестрикции авторитетом Совета Безопасности или его санкционного комитета 1718 по КНДР. В этой связи призываем всех проявлять сдержанность и на практике подтвердить готовность к возобновлению диалога в русле достигнутых ранее договоренностей и взятых обязательств. На столе остается российско-китайский проект «Политика гуманитарной резолюции Совета Безопасности», который мог бы стимулировать стороны активизировать переговорные усилия. При этом хотели бы отметить, что отсутствие продвижения на политическом треке, частью которого могла бы быть упомянутая резолюция, грозит дальнейшим ростом напряженности на полуострове, которую мы, с сожалением, фиксируем в последние месяцы. Я благодарю за внимание.
أشكر ممثلة الاتحاد الروسي على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل البرازيل.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And let me thank USG Rosemary DiCarlo for once again coming to brief the Council on this file. Brazil strongly condemns the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile by the DPRK. This is a flagrant violation of multiple Security Council resolutions and a clear breach of DPRK's own moratorium on ICBM launches. In January, North Korea broke the record for most launches in a single month. Now, they appear to have broken yet another ominous record, as this seems to be the longest-reaching missile ever launched by Pyongyang. The pattern of escalation is self-evident. First, multiple short-range ballistic missile launches, then intermediate-range artifacts. A few weeks ago, we witnessed alleged launches of reconnaissance satellites, which were rehearsals for this launch. Furthermore, it is the responsibility of this Council to avoid any risks of nuclear testing in violation of its resolutions and international treaties. This issue becomes all the more pressing at a time when different countries emphasize the relevance of nuclear weapons in their defense doctrines and deterrence strategies. Madam President, the Security Council must work tirelessly and transparently in order to pave the way for the de-escalation of tensions and for a sustainable solution to this matter. It is our common responsibility to halt any further escalation. The Council should be proactive and point in the direction of dialogue and effective negotiations. We call upon the key actors in the region to redouble efforts to engage with Pyongyang with a view to bringing the DPRK back to the negotiating table. This Council should stand ready to support such a course of action. In the same vein, we cannot condone inaction on the issue of DPRK's nuclear program. We must strive to find a platform for dialogue to push forward the realization of a transparent, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We avail ourselves of this opportunity to once again call upon the DPRK to review its nuclear status, join the Non-Proliferation Treaty as a non-nuclear weapon state, and accede to the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty without delay. I thank you.
أشكر ممثل البرازيل على بيانه. أدلي الآن ببيان بصفتي ممثلة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. أشكر وكيلة الأمين العام للشؤون السياسية وبناء السلام السيدة روزماري ديكارلو على إحاطتها القيمة. تستمر جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية في عدم الاكتراث بالقانون الدولي، حيث استأنفت منذ سبتمبر الماضي تجاربها الصاروخية، وأطلقت منذ بداية العام الحالي لوحده 13 صاروخاً باليستياً، والتي شملت تجربتها الأخيرة لصاروخ باليستي عابر للقارات. وعليه تدين الإمارات العربية المتحدة بأشد العبارات هذه التجارب الصاروخية التي تنتهك بشكل صارخ القانون الدولي وقرارات مجلس الأمن ذات الصلة. كذلك نؤيد البيان الصادر عن الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة يوم أمس بشأن التصعيد الأخير لجمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية. إننا وإذ نعرب عن بالغ قلقنا إزاء استمرار التصعيد المتكرر من قبل جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية في ظل غياب إجراءات رادعة من مجلس الأمن رداً على انتهاكاتها. نشدد على أهمية وحدة المجلس في الرد على هذا التصعيد الخطير، والذي نكرر أنه يقوض الأمن الإقليمي في شبه الجزيرة الكورية، فضلاً عن تداعياته على الأمن والاستقرار الدوليين. وفي ظل هذا المنعطف الخطير نشدد على أهمية اتباع الحلول السلمية وتغليب لغة الحوار والمساعي الدبلوماسية لتجنب المزيد من التصعيد، ونشيد في هذا الصدد بالجهود الدبلوماسية لاستئناف الحوار. ونحث بشدة جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية على الاستجابة لهذه المساعي والرجوع إلى طاولة المفاوضات دون شروط مسبقة، كما يتعين على جميع الأطراف الرئيسية في ظل الوضع الحالي الحرج إيجاد صيغة مشتركة يمكن عبرها تحديد إطار عمل مقبول للمضي قدما. وبينما يواصل صانعو القرار في جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية تكريس مواردها المحدودة لتطوير القدرات النووية والصاروخية، تستمر معاناة الشعب الكوري الشمالي إزاء الوضع الإنساني المتردي، والذي تسبب بجزء كبير منه سياسات تلك البلد. وعليه نحث بشدة جمهورية كوريا الشعبية الديمقراطية على الاستجابة للاحتياجات الإنسانية المتفاقمة لشعبها، بما في ذلك عبر التعاون مع الأمم المتحدة من خلال السماح لطاقم الأمم المتحدة الإنساني بالعودة إلى الأراضي الكورية لمزاولة نشاطه الإنساني فيها. وختاماً نشدد على أن الامتثال والتنفيذ الكامل لقرارات مجلس الأمن من قبل كافة الدول الأعضاء يظل ركيزة أساسية لصون الأمن والسلم الدوليين. من جانبها تؤكد دولة الإمارات على مواصلة تعاونها مع أعضاء مجلس الأمن للاستجابة لتهديدات الانتشار الإقليمية والدولية، وأننا نتفهم المشاغل المتعلقة بتطوير وانتشار الصواريخ البالستية ودورها في تقويض الأمن الإقليمي، والتي تتطلب من المجلس إيجاد السبل لمعالجتها. وشكرا. أستأنف مهامي كرئيسة للمجلس. طلبت ممثلة الولايات المتحدة الكلمة للإدلاء ببيان آخر. أعطي لها الكلمة.
Thank you, Madam President. Some of our colleagues are trying to frame this as a U.S. DPRK problem. This is a threat that impacts all of us, and it is our collective responsibility to respond. In terms of the humanitarian impact of sanctions, the experts have repeatedly told us that the number one barrier to sending humanitarian assistance into the DPRK is the DPRK's self-imposed border closures, not international sanctions, as some of our colleagues have alleged. The United States remains committed to addressing the humanitarian situation in DPRK, which is why we have offered to discuss these issues with the DPRK directly, but have yet to receive a response. We have also continued to support the 1718 Committee's swift processing of sanctions exemptions to aid organizations, and it is why we are now working closely with the UN Secretariat to establish a reliable banking channel. We call on DPRK to commit to the well-being of its own people by respecting human rights, defunding its unlawful WMD and ballistic missile program, and prioritizing the needs of vulnerable North Koreans. As for the draft resolution that China and Russia have proposed, is predicated on their assessment that DPRK is showing goodwill through a moratorium, as understood by the PRC in Russia, on IRBMs and ICBMs and nuclear tests. In addition to its January 30 IRBM launch, the DPRK has now ignored its own moratorium on ICBM tests 3 times, on February 27th, on March 5th, March 24th, ICBM launches. In light of these escalating provocations and a return to testing long-range systems, the purported impetus for the resolution is no longer valid. We need quickly to return to strengthening the 1718 sanctions regimes, not considering sanction relief. And finally, on AUKUS, although I do not want to stray from the serious matter at hand, I do want to correct the erroneous claims about AUKUS. The AUKUS initiative is to provide conventionally armed, nuclear-powered submarines to Australia. It does not include nuclear-armed submarines. The NPT does not prohibit naval nuclear propulsion, and Australia does not and will not seek nuclear weapons consistent with its NPT obligations as a non-nuclear weapon state. We take our NPT commitments very seriously, which also drives our strong support for the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثلة الولايات المتحدة على بيانها. طلبت ممثلة المملكة المتحدة الكلمة للإدلاء ببيان آخر. أعطي لها الكلمة.
Thank you, Madam President. As we've discussed, North Korea's illegal nuclear and ballistic missile programs are in violation of numerous Security Council resolutions. The trilateral cooperation between Australia, the US, and the UK will be fully consistent with the 3 parties' respective non-proliferation obligations and will be pursued in a manner that preserves the integrity of the non-proliferation regime. We remain fully committed to peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and worldwide. I thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثلة المملكة المتحدة على بيانها. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل جمهورية كوريا.
Madam President, let me begin by thanking you for convening today's emergency meeting of the Security Council. I appreciate this opportunity to participate in the Council's discussions to address the DPRK's intercontinental ballistic missile launch on March 24th. I also thank USG Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. Madam President, the Republic of Korea condemns in the strongest terms the DPRK's ICBM launch, which constitutes a flagrant violation of multiple Security Council resolutions. It poses a serious threat to the Korean Peninsula, the region, and the international community, and also is a significant threat to the global non-proliferation regime. This launch means that the DPRK has reneged on its own commitment to a moratorium on ICBM tests that it had announced in April 2018. We welcome the Secretary General's strong statement yesterday and look forward to a firm and united response by the Security Council. My delegation also expresses its support towards the U.S. initiative to pursue a new resolution in response to the DPRK's ICBM launch and calls on other members of the Council to join in this effort. Despite the international community's repeated calls for de-escalation and dialogue, the DPRK has continued its provocative activities in the last couple of months, as evidenced through countless ballistic missile launches. Reports on DPRK's movements to restore its nuclear test site and its ongoing nuclear-related activities are all deeply concerning. They must stop immediately. Madam President, throughout the past few years, my government has spared no effort to restart dialogue with the North, to seek progress towards complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. We offer to hold dialogue at the time, place, and format that North Korea prefers. My government has also expressed its willingness to support the North in responding to the global pandemic. Regrettably, all of these sincere efforts were met with not only a cold silence, but also with continued provocations. Let me be clear. No one harbors any hostile policy towards Pyongyang, nor is there any reason to do so. We strongly urge the DPRK to refrain from further provocations, fulfill its obligations under the relevant UN Security Council resolutions, and engage in meaningful dialogue with the Republic of Korea and the United States toward denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. We also call for all member states to fully implement relevant Security Council resolutions and also continue to support a peaceful and diplomatic solution on the Korean Peninsula. Madam President, my government firmly believes that dialogue and cooperation is the only possible way forward, regardless of the hurdles we face. Our commitment to improving inter-Korean relations remains unchanged. The door for dialogue still remains open. We strongly urge the DPRK to choose the path of engagement and cooperation instead of confrontation and escalation. The Republic of Korea, along with the international community, stands ready to work constructively with the DPRK to make a better future for all of us if the DPRK is willing to do so as well. I thank you, Madam President.
أشكر ممثل جمهورية كوريا على بيانه. أعطي الكلمة الآن لممثل اليابان.
Thank you, Madam President. I also thank Ms. Rosemary DiCaro for her briefing. Madam President, yesterday, North Korea launched an ICBM-class ballistic missile, which flew an estimated 1,100 kilometers with an apogee of an estimated 6,000 kilometers, the longest reach of any North Korean launch to date. It impacted in the Japanese exclusive economic zone, just 150 kilometers from Japanese soil. Japan strongly condemns this dangerous and destabilizing act. It endangered vessels in our EEZ and exposed aircraft in the surrounding area to great safety risk. It poses an imminent and grave threat to Japan's security. This is yet another serious violation of multiple resolutions adopted unanimously by this Council. It increases proliferation risks in every corner of the world and threatens international peace and security. Madam President, this is a clear escalation. We need concrete and immediate action by this Council. Let me make 3 points. First, the latest launch is the first full-scale ICBM launch since November 2017. Japan was seated in this chamber at that time and recalls that that event led to the subsequent adoption of Security Council Resolution 2397. This resolution stipulates that if the DPRK conducts a launch of a ballistic missile system capable of reaching intercontinental range, the Council will take action to restrict further the export to the DPRK of petroleum. I urge the Council to follow up and do what it already agreed to do. In this regard, I welcome the U.S. initiative to introduce a new resolution. Second, each of North Korea's repeated missile launches must not be viewed in isolation. They are part of its reinvigorated nuclear and missile programs. North Korea has publicly declared that it intends to acquire various weapons, including tactical nuclear weapons. These willful and repeated violations of Council resolutions are partly a result of the long, regrettable silence of the Council. This should end now. Third, this takes place when the world is struggling to restore peace in Ukraine and save many innocent civilian lives there. We must not allow North Korea to take advantage of this situation and further develop its prohibited capability. Madam President, the Council has repeatedly made clear that it is necessary to realize the dismantlement of all of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles of all ranges in a complete, verifiable, and irreversible manner in accordance with relevant Council resolutions. And these resolutions are not only about what North Korea needs to do, but also what we, the other member states, are obliged to do. Japan strongly urges all member states to fully implement relevant UN Security Council resolutions. It is not time for easing sanctions at all. In conclusion, Japan expects that the Council will fulfill its responsibility by swiftly taking united action. Japan will continue to work closely with Council members and all other member states to reach a comprehensive solution to the problems related to North Korea. I thank you.
أشكر ممثل اليابان على بيانه. لم يعد هناك أسماء مدرجة على قائمة المتحدثين. سأرفع الجلسة الآن ليتسنى للمجلس مواصلة مناقشته لهذا الموضوع في مشاورات مغلقة، وأرجو من جميع المراقبين مغادرة القاعة مباشرة فور رفع هذه الجلسة. رفعت الجلسة.